Hi, everybody, and welcome to my talk, How to Use GitLab to Enable Diverse and Cross-Functional Teams. My name is Nuritzi Sanchez, and I am the Senior Open Source Program Manager at GitLab. Formerly, I was President and Chairperson of the Board of Directors at the GNOME Foundation, and I currently run the GitLab for Open Source program. I have a background in product management, program management, project management, and business operations. And I use GitLab for my day-to-day job or my day job. Because of all of this, I wanted to share some of the tricks that I've learned and how to use it and share some of my insights in using GitLab to enable cross-functional teams. Today, we're going to go over why use GitLab cross-functionally. I want to talk a little bit about how to create the right environment, and I'll give you some tips and tricks for non-engineers. Let's dive right in with why it matters. When you create software, there are lots of different stages that it goes through in order to be deployed. For example, the manage, plan, create, verify, package, secure, release, configure, and defend stages. GitLab is a single platform to enable the entire software development lifecycle. And in the image to the right, you can see how we compare to a lot of different competitors for each of the different stages. And so when you use a single platform, GitLab is not just a place to host code, but it really is the entire platform for everybody to work on together in order to create the software. Using a single platform matters. It gives you transparency into other teams' work. It creates easier communication because people aren't siloed, and you are able to easily contribute to other teams. I'd like to share a little bit about my own story in using GitLab. I started using it through an open source community, through my work at GNOME. And when I first started, I was just doing strategy, event planning, and project management. But once they adopted GitLab, I decided to start editing the website pages because they were using GitLab Pages. And the markdown seemed easy enough for me to use. It seemed, very similar to Google Docs or other editors that I was familiar with. And I started to do simple things like adding files. Because of that background, when I joined GitLab, I had an easier time creating and reviewing merge requests and updating the GitLab website. And now I feel comfortable enough to look at other people's websites if they're hosted on GitLab or using GitLab Pages, and I can make merge requests and generally edit it. And that's something that I didn't think that I would be able to do when I first started. And what I think this highlights is a natural progression where when you start using a tool, if you're in project management or just doing something that's, not highly engineering focused, you start getting familiar with the tool and you start feeling that comfort, and then you might end up doing engineering-like things. So it's a pretty cool progression. And the reason why this matters is that we need a broader set of skills and diversity in open source. And I want to challenge us to think beyond what the normal kind of idea of what skill set diversity is, because I think that it's now more common practice for people to recognize that documentation's important, that design and UX. But what about things like sales and business development? People who either want to gain those skills or who are business professionals might be great at helping us fundraise or creating partnerships. And people who are in the HR or people field or who are interested in those subjects might be awesome at helping out at places in teams like the engagement team, or sitting on the board of directors of an open source organization, or helping with newcomers initiatives, maybe thinking about retention and how to make processes easier. So in order for that to happen, you can't just, wish that it will happen. It's all about creating the right environment. So I'd like to go over a few things that are necessary in order to set up the environment to enable the broader skill set and just regular other types of diversity. The first is to constantly think about the non-engineering experience. This influences a lot about how you end up rolling things out. And an example of this is that on our marketing, on the GitLab marketing website, at the very bottom of each page, there's something that says, edit this page, open in Web IDE, and please contribute. And so what this does is that for people who are not familiar with web editing, they can just scroll to the very bottom, click the edit this page or open in Web IDE, and it opens up into an editor that, again, is very similar to Google Doc editor in that it, lets you edit Markdown, which is pretty easy to get. And there are cheat guides, which I really love. Another thing that helps you create the right environment is making sure that the entire organization is aware of cross-cultural collaboration. And I've given a few speeches about this. I'm including a link to that below. But there are cultures that have high context versus low context speech, or they give negative feedback in different ways. All of this, if you don't have the right understanding, can create friction among open source communities, among companies. So it's important to educate your community and your team about the differences and create empathy that will help them better collaborate. Because we are now working across lots and lots of time zones in a remote place, now more than ever because of the pandemic, it's important to actively put in place better practices for enabling asynchronous communication and collaboration. And so these are all things that are important to create that right environment. Another thing is documentation. And here we're talking more about community handbooks or a company handbook, as opposed to product documentation. At GitLab, we have something called the handbook first approach, which basically means that you're supposed to respond with a link for everything. And what this does is that it makes you really think about, okay, where is this in the handbook? Is it up to date? Do I need to create a section? And so it oftentimes documentation gets stale. And so this handbook first approach really helps to keep the content fresh, because you have everybody thinking about it, because they should be linking to a section in the handbook that explains it. And things that go into the handbook are things like values, history, how different teams operate, what tools you use, etc. At GitLab, when you use GitLab Pages, you can also set things like code owners. So you can designate certain people to be sort of like maintainers. In the image to the left, I have a picture of that where you can see two people that are the maintainers of that page. This doesn't mean that they're the ones solely responsible for editing the page. It just means that they're responsible for making sure that it's up to date and generally helping along with a vision of what should be on that page. And having something like this really enables a remote culture, because people from different languages can use translators to help them. And they can read it at their own pace. It helps with people who might be, have vision impairment, where they can use screen readers, etc. And so it can really help you create a more diverse community by having all your practices written down. If you're interested in this topic, I invite you to join us at IEEE SA Open. We have a community handbook best practices working group and I've included the link below in the slides. Another thing that's really important is onboarding and training. And there's lots of different types of onboarding. There's things like tools onboarding and subject matter onboarding and social onboarding. And here's an example to the left is an image of an onboarding template, an issue template, where GitLab, when you first onboard, they have something that every new hire needs to go through. It includes links to the values and the history of the org, video recordings to trainings about the tools, tasks that everyone should complete, instructions on how to have social onboarding, scheduling coffee chats and the like, and tasks that specific teams need to complete, like the design team, engineering team, engagement, etc. And so by having GitLab issues for this, you can see a place where in open source communities, you can have this set up for everybody so that they have like a basic knowledge coming in and can really find things more easily in the handbook. All right, we just have a few minutes left, so I'm going to go over a few tips and tricks for non-engineers. The first, if you don't know this one already, is a must. You can create lists with tasks. Having an asterisk and open brackets basically makes a checkbox that you can use to then mark tasks as being done. And we use this a lot at GitLab to oftentimes like ask for approval for things, because when people check it, it records that and has like a specific mention of it in the issue. Another thing that I really like is this suggestions in code feature, because I admitted it earlier on, I use Google Docs pretty heavily. And this is a feature that gets us a little bit closer to that, where if you're using GitLab for publishing an article, for example, and you want to give feedback, this is something similar to how you just have a suggested edit in another editor. You can add a comment by clicking on a little, looks like a flag icon or something, comment icon. Then you click on a button called Insert Suggestion, and you can add whatever you propose as your suggested edit. And then it appears in line so that people can either approve it or reject it. And you can comment on it as well. So it's a really handy thing that, again, kind of moves us closer to the Google Docs editing functionality. Another thing, because when you're creating software, you need to work with the entire team, and designers are a huge part of that. In other companies that I've worked, the design team typically uses one tool, and then the engineering team uses a separate tool. And with GitLab, you can use the single tool. This feature is similar to what InVision app has. I don't know how many people are familiar with that, but essentially you can upload designs and then you can click on them to comment and say, for example, like, this specific blue hurts my eyes. Can you please change it? And that way people can have a conversation about that specific design and add comments, and it really helps with the design and iteration process. And as a program project manager like person, I love this ability to have parent epics, child epics, and issues where you can drill down into the different child epics, and you can see things like, is this task on track? Does it need attention? Is it at risk? It's called issue health. And so you can use that when you're really keeping track of a large project to better understand how your project is doing overall. We use it a lot for our OKRs, which is objectives and key results. And it just really helps managers have a good view, a good understanding of how much work is being done each quarter. We're generally implementing more and more into the project management side of GitLab. So it's really exciting to see how this is progressing. With a release each month, we're moving really quickly into adding more functionality there. We're pretty much at time, so I just want to say that if you want more tips and tricks and understanding how teams like accounting, legal, design, marketing, and other functionalities use GitLab, we're creating a Beyond Code event series in conjunction with the Women TMRG group at GitLab, where women at GitLab will be presenting ways that they use GitLab in their day jobs for all of those previously mentioned departments. You can check it out. There's a link here, about.gitlab.com/events, and we'll be posting details soon. Last but not least, we invite you to join us in creating GitLab. We're an open core company with an open roadmap. And so we really want to hear from the community in order to make the best product for all of you. With that, I'm just going to leave you with some resources. I will be posting my slides, and you can also find them at this bit.ly link, bit.ly/ns_talks_2021. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you soon.